There is an article in today's Forbes magazine which says that lead levels in US lipsticks are rising. It's written by Amy Westervelt, who doesn't seem to be very good with numbers because the data she uses to support this assertion shows no such thing. The study she's talking about is a continuation of one that I referred to in a blog post I wrote a couple of weeks ago on the subject of lead in lipstick. In the first study, 20 lipsticks were taken at random from the shelves and the lead levels in them were measured. They were all very low indeed, but there was a range of values. Some were very, very low indeed. I think there was a 0 in there, in fact. And some went up to levels as high as 3 or 4 parts per million. In the follow-up study, they took a much larger sample of 400 lipsticks, again taken at random, and again they measured the lead levels, and again they were all very low. The average in the first study was 1.07 parts per million lead, and the average in the second study was 1.11 parts per million. That's not a big difference. And they found when they took a larger sample they got a bigger range of numbers, and they got a few higher numbers than they found in the smaller sample. This is not remotely surprising or indeed particularly informational. If you took 20 men at random and measured their heights, one of them would be the tallest. If you then took a sample of 400 men, the tallest man in the 400 sample is much more likely to be taller than the tallest man in the smaller sample. That's just the way numbers tend to work out. It would actually be more surprising if they didn't get those figures. So the basic premise of the story, which is that lead levels are increasing, is not borne out. If you have read my blog post, you'll know that the lead in lipstick story is a very old one. It surfaces every couple of years and has become such a regular feature of the beauty industry that I actually regard it as part of our culture, and I look forward to it in the way some people might look forward to the Olympics. For me, it's a bit like one of those pop songs you hear on the radio every now and again. It's not a great pop song, but it reminds you of something in your past, and it just gives you a warm feeling of familiarity. And right on cue, my favourite pantomime villains, the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, have leapt on the bandwagon. They don't seem to realise that the first study completely discredited their story about lead in lipstick, and now they seem equally unaware that the follow-up simply confirms that debunking. The reason I am so relaxed about the low levels of lead found in these studies is that not only are the figures really quite tiny and the amount of lipstick you use very small indeed, but I've also got a pretty good idea of the form that lead is in those lipsticks. The lead is probably coming mainly from mineral pigments that are used in the manufacture of the lipstick, and that will be in the form of a sort of hard, insoluble, solid particle. It's the kind of thing that your body is going to find very, very hard to digest, and there's not very much of it anyway, and it's coated with wax. So the risk of the lead doing you any harm at all, even if it was there at much higher levels, is pretty low. So it's really not something to be hugely concerned about. But it did occur to me that there was one other way lead could get into lipsticks, which would be more alarming. Imagine you were making your lipstick in a place where there was a high level of lead pollution, say in the middle of a large industrial area. It's possible that the lead getting into your lipstick in that way would be quite different. And I think the easiest way to illustrate that is to look at what was a serious health problem with lead, which was the presence of lead in petrol. The point about lead in petrol was it was an organic compound of lead which made the lead highly mobile, very easy to absorb and very easy for the body to metabolise. So although there were quite low levels of lead in petrol, it was in a form that was very easy to assimilate. The low levels of lead in lipstick are, I believe, in a form that is very hard to assimilate, so really the level of risk is, orders of magnitude different, and in fact it's virtually not there at all. However, how can I be completely confident that the lead being detected in these studies is in the form that I think it's in? And I think there is a way you can tell from the numbers, but it's a bit subtle, so I'll see if I can explain it. If you were looking at contamination with free lead, which is something I really would not want to put on my lips, I don't think you get the pattern of the data that we see. If you look at the 400 data points, they form a sort of even spread of numbers. There are some very, very low ones, quite a few medium-sized ones, and a few ones that are higher than the medium. And this is the sort of normal pattern that data comes in when it's drawn from a sort of normal source. The thing that would be worrying is if there were, say, 20 factories making lipstick in normal circumstances, and lipstick factories are everywhere. Every country has factories making lipsticks. If some of those lipsticks were coming from factories located in areas of high lead pollution, what you would see is that those lipsticks would have values that were very different from the average, so that if you looked at the whole range of the data, you'd see very, very different figures from the problem lipsticks. The fact that the overall picture is very smooth and very even in this FDA study makes me feel confident that the lipstick industry in the United States, far from being a dangerous risk to health, actually is probably pretty well managed and producing products of a sort of pretty good quality that I'd be quite happy to use. So, what kind of data would trouble me? As it happens, I was talking about this Forbes study online with some colleagues in the business, and my good friend Robert Tisserand drew our attention to this rather interesting study in the Journal of Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology. And what these guys have done is look at the lead levels in products on the market in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia imports stuff from all around the world, so there's a much wider range of cosmetics on sale there than there would be in most other markets. And it is interesting. When you look at the European and American products they've tested, the results are pretty comparable with the results the FDA have found on testing products from their own market in America. And that's the case for most of the stuff, but there are some figures from Chinese manufacturers, not all the Chinese manufacturers, I should add, just a couple of them, which are quite different to the pattern of the rest of the data. So imagine there's a sort of population of figures that looks like that, and then there's another set of figures that's higher and looks like this. And I think what that shows you is that these are being made under very different conditions, and they're very different to the rest of them. And it would not surprise me if when you investigated the source of the lead in these products made in China might be quite different. I don't know what it would be. Maybe it's fumes from a nearby smelting plant, or even just heavy traffic outside a factory which doesn't have a very good sort of air filters or something like that. I don't know, but the point being is that's what a problem looks like. Now, you can't conclude from the data that there is a problem, but it does show you that there could be a problem. If I was given the choice of using those cosmetics, I would not use them, even though the lead levels, even in the high ones, are still probably well within the kind of limits that wouldn't be worrying me if I saw them in a product from a more controlled environment. The authors of the paper have chosen not to reveal the names of the brands, but they were bought in the Saudi equivalent of pound shops or dollar shops, as you'd have in the States. I don't think they would be the kind of products that you would see on the shelves in America or the UK or anywhere the rest of Europe. And obviously, although they do raise concerns for end users, the real issue there is the people who are in the factory making them. They're going to be exposed to much higher levels of lead than anybody using the products, and there could very well be a serious health issue on that basis. The other thing is, that's just looking at the lead. What else is in there if the things aren't being manufactured under careful conditions? All sorts of things could be going wrong. They really are things you want to avoid. So there you have it. You heard it here first. A genuine lead in lipstick problem. It was published in a journal in 2009 and has been ignored by everybody ever since. It is a serious health issue, and if there were a sort of international version of the campaign for safe cosmetics, it would be something that they really ought to take an interest in. But mainly, as I say, for the good of the people manufacturing them. That's basically how most of the problems with ingredients in cosmetics have been found out over the years. Things like coal tar were only discovered because the people handling them in the factories had problems. They never really manifested themselves as problems in the population as a whole. So I will try and write this up into one of my normal erudite blog posts with full references and everything, but I just wanted to get this out quickly, so I've resorted to doing a video this time. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed hearing my voice and seeing my face for a change, and I hope to see you back on my blog again soon. Thanks very much.